Hello and welcome to Citizens Forum. This is being filmed on Wednesday, March 26th in the Memorial Arena in beautiful Victoria. I'd like to start off by thanking our great volunteer crew and Shaw staff who make it all happen. The first part of Citizens Forum is always the Walter and Jack Show. So Walter, I'm going to start off with, this is Watershed Sentinel magazine. I just want to, I think one of the biggest parts of the many problems we have in this country is the fact that the other side owns all the media, all the big media. So it's up to us to support the alternative media. Now, the front page story in the Watershed Sentinel is about fracking, one of the most important issues in the world right now. No coverage in the corporate media. If people want the truth, you've got to support the alternative media that is willing to give it to you. So the Watershed Sentinel, Focus Magazine, Street News here in Victoria, CFUV Radio.
Yeah, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives puts out a small magazine, all top quality articles.
And it's a good website. Just Google Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. It's a good place to go.
Yeah.
I should go there more often.
Well, we're so used to reading things online, and
Yeah.
but I prefer paper. I prefer to have something like that sitting around on my kitchen counter or the coffee table, and when you have a moment or two, you can look over the information again. It's much friendlier than having to get yourself in front of a computer and all that.
Yeah. So Watershed Sentinel, it's all on the computer. Go and subscribe. Watershed Sentinel, Street News, Focus Magazine, CFUV Radio here in Victoria at UVic. They have some great current affairs shows on, some great news shows, and probably a lot of great music.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Well, you know, our conversations always flow around different topics, different themes. You know, there's a number of things that sort of concern me. This week, I think, was the expense scandals, which I have not read, you know, and got the names all down and all that. But I know Ginny Kwan was involved in some controversy where her husband was supposed to have paid for a trip, and it turned out being a nonprofit society that he charged the trip to, and that was.
And now today, this is Wednesday the 26th, the story has exploded into more about how all of our MLAs are taking their spouses along when they go traveling. And the number that I saw today was $180,000, I think, under two different categories, about $180,000 for the last 9 months of 2013. I think I'm right with those numbers. So $180,000, you could take 26 poor families and give them $5,000 each and bring them out of poverty for that kind of money. And instead, it's just, they're out of control.
Well, it is sort of. You know, I'm somewhere in the middle on that one, because what about the MLAs that are coming from up north and, you know, we've got some travel issues big time and trying to participate in the legislature, and they're going to be missing their families for weeks and months at a time.
Then tell us.
Exactly.
Then tell us that this should not come as a surprise.
Yeah. That's what I would say would be to get to the point where let's tighten these rules up.
What we should have is a public body that oversees these kinds of expenses. The problem is that it's in the hands of the MLAs themselves to make and set their own rules. And, you know, when the Auditor General went into the legislature about a year ago, he found complete chaos in the bookkeeping, to the point where I think the Auditor General said he really couldn't say what was going on because there's simply no records. That can't be allowed. And then they fired the Auditor General.
Well, would that not be on purpose, so, Jack? Isn't that convenient? You know, you got the cookie jar, you got it on the shelf, and oh, there's a little bit of money in there, and who's in charge of the cookie jar? You are. So you really can't be, you know, nobody can say you broke the law. And I think that whole system has to just be regulated in a way that's fair. I think MLA should declare all expenses once a year, just like everybody else does. But they have to declare all expenses, and including trips and everything, and they have to remember that they're accountable. You know, Ginny Kwan, who I really sympathize towards, because this was a case where it wasn't government money, but upon reflection, you think, you know, you're an MLA, you're taking a big holiday, it's costing $35,000 or something. You know, you should quiz your husband a little more than that to be darn sure that there's no improprieties occurring, because it could really ruin your career. And I thought Ginny Kwan might have been a leadership candidate for the NDP. She's one of the better candidates, really. Hasn't been embroiled in a lot of the old scandals that all the others have that are in this are registered in the campaign. And it just seemed kind of convenient that she's pretty well been removed from that list.
Oh, that's very true. She's certainly,
you know, but maybe not. Maybe not. I would hope that she would still run.
So I think the solution to this is that there's got to be a complete outside body that sets the rules for our legislators. They cannot be in charge of the rules that govern them. That's, I think, one of the most fundamental problems.
Yeah.
They are supposed to, all they're supposed to be doing really is representing us and running the government's day-to-day business.
Mm-hmm.
When they start making the rules, for example, Christy Clark has said, oh, we think we'll elect all city councillors for 4 years instead of 3, starting pretty soon. That's in the works.
Yeah.
How can it possibly be her right?
Yeah.
To make that kind of decision without even asking the people of BC? Because it's a big change. Our city councillors are already too, I don't know the word to use, but too cut off from us.
They're removed.
To give them 4 years every time they get elected, I mean, they're totally unaccountable.
Yeah, I mean, your knee-jerk reaction is if the Liberals are doing something to change the rules on municipal elections, it's going to be to their advantage. And I don't think they've been that preoccupied with democracy up till now. So the red flags should be coming out. We should be worried about what the heck they're up to.
There was a full-page ad in the paper yesterday in the Times Colonist. This is Tuesday, March the 25th. It says 2014, the year BC parks change forever. And it shows, I guess, an oil rig and a pipeline in the middle of a park, because that's what the Liberals were proposing. And my understanding is that the law, I think I heard today that the law has now passed. And it says in the ad they're rushing through legislation that will change the face of BC parks forever by making it easier for corporations to take land out of provincial parks for industrial uses, including pipelines, logging roads, and transmission lines. This is being done with no public consultation. This has been done in complete secrecy. I mean, even I'm interested in this kind of stuff, and I try to follow what's going on. I had no idea that this was happening or on the verge of being, and here they've changed the rules protecting our parks. And, you know, a bunch of groups placed a full-page ad in the Times Colonist, but, you know, the Times Colonist doesn't even see fit to tell its readership about what's going on. Why isn't this front-page news? You know, why isn't it front-page news day after day? Instead, you know, they love to put murder on the front page.
Or spending scandals.
Yeah, yeah.
Which are going nowhere. Nothing's ever going to happen with this. It'll be a little bit of ruffle, but yeah, you're right. This is very, very big, and it's too bad that it has to be an ad in the paper. You know, that this is not seen to be
And how
news.
dare this corrupt, undemocratic bunch dare to do something like this, to change the laws protecting our parks without even telling us. I mean, I think we all know that Christy Clark is not only a corporate puppet, but completely out of control. There seem to be no rules and regulations anymore.
I really don't think that she can make any decisions without direct instructions from public relations firms who are getting their instructions directly from large corporate interests. It's straight as an arrow as you can make. They don't make any decisions. There's not one single major public policy announcement that's happened in the last, how long, Jack? 20 years? As long as I've been aware, that hasn't been created and generated through PR firms. You know, I think when Christy Clark won the election, they couldn't sit in the legislature for about a year because they weren't planning on winning. They had no script. They had to wait for it to be written for them and give them further instructions to do this sort of thing. Is there a groundswell in British Columbia of public sentiment that is just demanding that these parks get opened up for development? No. There's something entirely different going on. And I don't think she's smart enough, or none of those people there are smart enough to come up with this on their own. You know, that's the problem.
Why would they?
Yeah.
Why would they? So once again, this is an ad in the Times Colonist yesterday, March 25th. BC's parks are now opened up, as far as I understand, to corporate development. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see if the media even tells us about it. There's a provincial election in Quebec. The only thing I really want to say about that is that Quebec has banned fracking. And Quebec also has, I think, $7 a day daycare. And those two issues are never, ever, ever, ever mentioned by our corporate media. And why are they never mentioned? Because the owners of the corporate media do not want you and I to know that in Quebec, daycare is $7 a day, and it just supports families.
Yeah, university tuition fees are around 30% of the national average.
And fracking is banned. And those issues are never mentioned. We have to build an independent media. You know, I've read that, you know, they say democracy cannot survive without a free press. Democracy cannot survive without a free press. Our free press is completely gone. Television, radio, newspaper, it's gone. So, and our democracy has not survived.
No.
So we've got to get it back.
I think really on the big issues, I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do, but on the big issues that you read globally in the paper every day, and what's happening in the Ukraine, and you know there's an agenda on the go. How do we know what the agenda is? We're trying to put the pieces together of a puzzle, and we just have a few pieces and we don't know where they fit. And in that perspective, in that global perspective, they've pretty well removed us from the process. The average person really is not involved in those decisions about warfare, which is a major, major cause of environmental destruction and economic ruination. Those decisions about huge economic decisions are removed from us entirely. And we have to get, in my view, get more involved at that level, and just we have to demand that we have more participation. The United Nations was supposed to have been that tool, you know, but it was been gerrymandered so badly now it's almost unusable. But we're just sort of stuck in this place right now for what would you say, 20 or 30 years now, as we've watched the climate you know, heat up and watched our economics go down the toilet. So,
yeah.
I
mean, all quite deliberate.
Yeah, we're removed from that. But I think that the other side of it is, and maybe with Christy Clark changing the election rules for municipalities, it's going to get less democratic. But I really think it's important to get involved locally and participate in local politics. And a lot of issues get generated up from the ground from those sort of processes, and I think we still have to remain engaged there.
Well, I think definitely everybody in Victoria and Saanich should be phoning City Hall and speaking to the people who are on the sewage, on the CRD, and ask them, what the hell are you doing on this sewage treatment issue? How have you bunch of, I don't know what, gotten us into this situation where we're on the verge of spending $800 million for a sewage treatment system that really doesn't do us any good, when we can do something better for less, or we don't have to do anything at all. I mean, this is just crazy. Phone your city councillors, especially Victoria and Saanich. They're the two councils that have gotten us into this mess with sewage treatment. I just want to go back to what happened with the Portland Hotel Society, which is the group in Vancouver that was, you know, living high on the hog while helping the poor. I heard somebody on CKNW, which is the biggest, one of the hosts on the biggest radio station in Vancouver, and CFAX radio here is exactly the same, very critical of the executive of the Portland Hotel Society because they're taking money from the poor. That's what they're taking money from the poor. How dare you? And they're right. You know, they were in effect taking money from the poor and living pretty high on the hog. But CKNW and CFAX themselves, for decades, have followed and supported and promoted all the economic policies that have created the poor. Yeah. We don't have to have poverty and homelessness in this country. We've got it because our corporate rulers want it. And their media, certainly including CKNW and CFAX, these two powerful radio stations, have, I mean, I've watched it for decades. They began by blaming the poor. They told us we had no money. They didn't tell us that the national debt had been deliberately created in order to take our money from us. And then they get on their high horse and say these people are stealing a few thousands. The corporations have stolen billions, hundreds of billions from us with never a word of criticism in the media, which they own.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on priorities and spending. I was listening to CBC this morning and I just caught, you know, they were talking about early childhood development and children that had behavioral problems and what it costs to have special assistance and all that, and really effective strategies. It's something like $1,000 a year to keep that child on track, let's say. If you don't, keeping a lot of people have incarcerated for life costs $3 million a person. So instead of spending the $10,000 or $12,000 during the educational period and having a healthy and, you know, somebody that participates in society, we would seemingly would rather create a criminal and then spend $3 million incarcerating them for the next rest of their lives. And by the way, incarceration is a booming business in Canada and it's growing. So you can see where the emphasis is. They want to spend money on jails. Yeah. So it's not working.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It seems to me like they're trying to destroy our society.
Yeah.
And you know, that's what I sort of see happening, and they're quite. You know, I think we can all see it. You know, the head of the bus drivers union in Vancouver, because of an attack on a bus driver, said our civil society is breaking down.
Yeah.
And you know, the bus drivers are, you know, they see probably more than a lot of us ever want to see. But I see it happening around Victoria. It's all deliberate. It's being done to us. I mean, they know that if you create a society where people are relatively equal in income, things are going to be pretty good. They've done this. They know what the impacts are going to be. They've done it deliberately. There's no need for it. They've stolen from the poor to give to the rich. And they know the impacts.
Well, yeah, in the end, you have this sort of society in which people are fearful. And if you're really fearful about your job or about your status in society, you're much less likely to speak out on some issues, particularly if you may not be popular with those views. But unpopular views are the ones that have saved us in the past, you know. We have to realize that some people are thinking about issues and trying to steer us away from making major mistakes. All voices should be listened to very carefully and all opinions are valid. But now we just have this monolithic view of the world, and you find people are staying very strictly within a certain set of parameters of what's legitimate commentary. And in the end, you just have a kind of a desert. There's nothing really happening there's no rich ideas. You know, there's just these ideas that are old, tired ideas that don't work, but they're just being re-foisted on us like time and time again.
I just want to say a few words about vaccination. The media is really pushing this last couple of weeks. Everybody should get vaccinated. I've even seen that on editorials. Everybody let's make vaccination mandatory. I'll just say this, don't believe anything you're reading in the media about vaccinations, how they're safe and effective, because I don't think any of those things are true. I don't think they're safe, and I don't think they're effective. And secondly, we can't trust our public health officials. I mean, our public health officials do not work for us. They work also, it seems, for corporate Canada, or certainly, I mean, that's what I see, that's what I think.
Well, it should be evidence-based, and decisions should be made upon good hard evidence. Find the evidence for us that vaccinations actually do work, that aren't paid for by large pharmaceutical companies, and you'll get a very different picture. It's a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars are spent on them. And by the way, they make their profits whether or not they're effective or not. They sell the vaccines.
Yeah. Walter, we got 1 minute left.
1 minute left, Jack. What else is there to talk about? I mean, the little discussion we had before we came was about the Malaysian airline going down. That's all a big preoccupation for everyone, wondering where this plane went. Apparently, it sounds like they're finding debris, although I'd like to see better satellite pictures of it all. But I'm always concerned about stories like this because we have a kind of a crime in which we don't know what is the motive here. Who actually, if this plane was hijacked, who were these people? Why would you hijack a plane just to crash it into the ocean? You know, there's something missing in this whole story, and I'm really concerned that it's not one of these diversionary stories that keep us preoccupied when we're not looking at other more substantial issues that we could do something about.
Yeah. Walter, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, Jack.
And thanks for watching Citizens Forum. Welcome to segment 2 of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Wednesday, March 26th. Our guest in this segment is Will Smith. And Will, you've been on a few times before, and lately we've been talking about consciousness, so away we go.
Well, yeah, this has just been the most fascinating time for me to be working on this show, because my consciousness has shifted so much. I mean, coming from a fairly conservative background, and then just having my world ripped open by a lot of the things that that we've been looking at over the course of the past year. And so as I listen, as I'm directing the show, and I'm listening to you talk to all these different people, and then I go home and think about things. And one of the things that I think about is, what about the consciousness of the people who are doing some of these things? You know, and you're saying, we've got to stop these people. We've got to stop them. And then I read about them, or I look at them, and I think, well, this guy doesn't think he's a bad guy. He thinks he's a good guy. So I just want to open up that conversation a little bit, because, you say, well, this guy's, he's fracking and he's destroying the environment. But he thinks he's saving our economy from a crater. And, I mean, it's just amazing to me how all these different people have all these different points of view.
Yeah.
And I mean, a guy like Stephen Harper, who would, I mean, I'm not going to go into it, but apparently would, get the gold fillings out of his relatives before they're cold. Some of the bills that he's passed, I mean, I know some of the people that are directly affected by some of his ideas of legislation, and I mean, it's just, I don't think he's thinking about individuals. I think he's thinking about what's good for the country. But nevertheless, he still thinks that he's doing the right thing.
No, I can't believe
I
that.
really do believe that. I mean, I think that everybody thinks that they're for the most part. I mean, there are guys, trying to bring down the universe and everything, but there are people who are in the highest positions of government who are doing bad things, but who think they're doing the right thing. And even, I mean, so let's talk about 9/11, for example, just not about, but if those guys knew what they were doing, if it was brought down by the U.S. government or entities within the U.S. government, what about the consciousness of those people? How do they feel about killing people? Do they feel that it's okay to kill people? Do they enjoy killing people? Or are they saying, well, I'm in a position of power and I have to make the tough decisions? I'm going to kill 2,000 people in the world, or however many people were killed in the World Trade Center, in order to avoid killing 500,000 people or something like that. So what's the deal?
Well, I'd say,
answer, what do you think about
yeah,
that?
in terms of the people, let's say, which I believe, that there were people at the highest levels within the U.S. government who were directly involved and behind 9/11, and I'll include the owners of the media in that, because their job following 9/11 was to make sure that the truth was never told in any of their media. So you said, we're making a tough decision. We're going to kill 3,000 people in the World Trade Center in order to avoid killing thousands of people later. I'd say it's the exact opposite. I think they killed thousands of people in the World Trade Center so they could then go and kill millions more around the world in order to profit from it. And I think they knew exactly what they were doing.
Well, I misspoke. Now, what I'm saying is, okay, so they're looking at, well, I'm governing this country, and if I don't kill this many people in our country, the country that I'm responsible for, then thousands more, tens of thousands more will die eventually. I mean, I don't care about these people over here because they're just expendable.
Yeah, I think it's more like 10,000 won't die in our own country because, I mean, I don't think they care about.
Well, all I'm saying is, I just think that somehow in the people, the rulers, whoever is doing this stuff, I think that in their minds it's all justified. And that they think they're doing the right thing. So this is really interesting because now I can say, well, wait a minute, it's like we're all humans, but we're fighting against each other. And I think that's where the change of consciousness is going to come from, that this consciousness that you can't solve a social problem by killing people. I think that I'm putting this out there, but that's my hypothesis now. What do you think? Well,
consciousness is something that I never think about, but since we started to talk about it, I have started to think about it, and it's such a very important thing, because I guess your consciousness is what makes you do the things you do. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm saying is, maybe
I think our consciousness is completely controlled. I think that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do agree with that. After spending a lot of time reading about this and thinking about it, I'd have to say that at least for a majority of the time, that's true. We may have moments of our own, of being able to control our own consciousness, but I'm getting to that same idea that we're manipulated a lot. So I wanted to do a consciousness experiment today, and just to show you how that can flip very quickly. So the thing I'm going to tell you here is, now I'm just going to ask you how you feel about what I'm going to say. Just kind of monitor how you feel about it. Okay. But let's just say that I'm going to tell you that there's a country, there's a place here. I'm just wondering if you'd like to visit this place. It's where, and they chop off the sex organs and put them on display, and they think that's a really great thing to do. How do you feel about that? Kind of weird, isn't it? Yeah, it's really weird. Okay, now I'm going to tell you where that is. It's everywhere. It's flowers. So we have these sentient creatures called flowers. This has been shown in a book called The Secret Life of Plants, that flowers are sentient. And
sentient
meaning they can feel.
Okay.
They have. So if you go in and you cut a flower in a lab, the other flowers know about it.
Yes. Or in a park, or in your garden.
Yeah. So here we are. This is something we regularly do all over the world, and yet we're completely oblivious to how the flowers feel about it.
That's right.
So isn't that an interesting thing, though? Because
but you know what?
This is a
I'm
consciousness.
not. I do think about that.
Do you?
I don't know if other people do.
I think you're pretty rare. Well, the reason this came to mind, I was reading about a book called The Cosmic Serpent. I was actually reading the book. Jeremy Narby, I think is the guy's name, and this is I think he was a biologist, and he went down to the Amazon and he ended up taking ayahuasca, so that he went on an altered state of an altered state.
Ayahuasca
is the most powerful hallucinogen known. Has DMT in it, and that's a hallucinogen. That's an endogenous hallucinogen, by the way. It's produced by the pineal in our body. but you can also just take it. So anyway, he as a biologist was, you know, at a very scientific framework in his whole way of dealing with things, and he had to change it completely because he realized that this was a shock to him, finding out that other creatures are sentient. I mean,
well, you know, talk about consciousness. I remember when that book you mentioned, The Secret Life of Plants.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came out. I mean, it was decades and decades ago.
Right, exactly. I think it was the 60s or early 70s.
So, I mean, what that book said, and I think it said it very clearly, they, you know, with the scientific measurements and everything else,
Yeah.
that plants are sentient. They have feelings. They know what's going on. If somebody goes in and is very negative or bad to
Exactly.
plants in a room, the next time that person comes in, you can measure the reaction of the plants.
Yes.
And what's interesting, you know, in terms of consciousness is that whole story has been, as far as I know, I've never heard it again. I haven't heard it anywhere in the media for the last 40 years. You just never see it. So they've taken away from us that consciousness that plants are sentient.
But you can still go to the library and read about it.
Oh yeah, but I haven't. I mean, you
Okay.
just, I mean, that's what I mean about how our consciousness is controlled, because I think they quite deliberately, so we go around totally uncaring, totally unthinking, hey, it's a plant.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking is now...
It's part of us.
So what happens to our consciousness if all of a sudden we are, you know, we become aware of these things? What if we can feel, when we cut off a flower, it kind of does something to us? Like, I mean, what if you came up to a person and hurt them? You would feel something, right? I mean, you would feel
One would hope
sympathy,
so.
some kind of pain. So I think that's a huge change of consciousness that may be, because that's what happens in the Amazon. There was another fellow that I was reading, and it's very interesting when you start, I just get all these books, and I mean, like, I've been through hundreds of books. I don't read them all, but I grab them and I read some and I read the conclusion. And I read the table of contents always, and I kind of get these ideas. So another one that I looked at was Dennis McKenna, and he was another one who went down and took an ayahuasca trip in Brazil, I think it was. And one of the things that he got out of his trip was he talked with snakes. And these snakes in his vision said, "You monkeys just think you run things." So what he's saying is that humans aren't in charge. Okay, well, we're obviously so preoccupied with our own little world, with our own little consensus reality, that we're not paying attention. There's some really amazing stuff going on around us right now. And I think that our consciousness is changing, and it's going to change very rapidly. And I think that's what we're looking at. It's going to change because the changes that are happening are growing exponentially. We can't handle exponents. I think I talked about this on another show, that, you know, if you're given this problem in high school, the pond gets the population of lily pads doubles every day, and it's full in 30 days. When's it half full? And the answer, everybody says 15 days, but that's not so. If it doubles every day, the 29th day, that's when it's half full. So you can backtrack and you can say, well, on the, let's see, on the 30th day it's full, 29th it's half, 28th it's quarter, 27th it's eighth. So on the 27th day, you've only got a couple days left, but it doesn't look like there are very many lily pads. That's what's going on around us. We've got food chains crashing in the Pacific, and in the Gulf of Mexico. We've got radiation going off the charts in places that nobody wants to look at. We've got all this buildup for war. All these, and then the financial system has been detonated. I mean, this is going to result in a lot of hunger because there are a lot of people in the world who are just on the edge. And so when you shoot a bullet into a freight train's engine and it's going 100 miles an hour, it's going to take a while for it to slow down. Nevertheless, it is going to stop. And I think that's where we are. So that's what I'm trying to get across here, is that we all need to change our consciousness and not pay attention to what the newspaper is telling us, because that's not really important in the grand scheme of things. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter that somebody ripped off $5,000. I mean, it's not important. Nobody's going to remember that when there's, you know, when there are other bigger problems. So I think that's what we ought to be focusing on. And we have to each do that ourselves. We have to figure this stuff out.
And we have to start coming up, I would think, we have to start coming up with solutions for the problems that we're about to face, because, I mean, they're
huge.
Gargantuan,
Yeah.
And they're coming at us.
So the main thing is, you know, to me, is that we have to keep sanguine when the whole world looks like it's going to fall apart too. I mean, we have to keep our optimism up, because if we're negative all the time and we're worried, then we get sick, and you know, we're depressed. So I think those are our main the things that we have to do. It's like we're called to do that to stay healthy.
So, you know, I mean, here's us on our little TV show here in Victoria. You know, one of the things I always say is we've got to build our own media. I think having our own media, and what I mean by our own media is a media that works for the people of Canada. Mm-hmm. And I think if we can do that, then we can start raising our consciousness and changing our consciousness, because we'll be getting the information that we think is important. As it is, we're given only the information that the corporations who own the media want us to have, which is very, very dangerous, incredibly dangerous, and it's a big part of the reason we are in the messes that we're in.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's my little dream. Let's build our own media. You know, it's not happening.
I think it is happening. I mean, I think we're actually doing that right now. And one of the things that this is working here has brought out for me is, and I haven't been a big news watcher for 20 years. I mean, frankly, when Bill Clinton bombed an aspirin factory because of his dalliances in the Oval Office, I just thought, this really doesn't have anything to do with me. This is a show. I mean, come on. This isn't anything. This isn't a real leader, somebody who would bomb an aspirin factory just to get attention. And that's how I find the whole thing. I find politicians woefully irrelevant to what's going on. They're really not paying attention.
Yeah, but
so I think that what we have to do as the new media is we have to, instead of showing people how horrible we are and how horrible everything is we have to show people how amazing we are, and how we, you know, we're, as you say, we're being specifically or dumbed down, or you know, we're not being encouraged to live up to our fullest potential. But and we're not going to even start this conversation today, but I'm going to lead in to the next time. I've got really completely depressed after Fukushima, because to me that just meant, you know, 4.3 billion years of radioactivity around the globe, and I just didn't see any way out. But I've been reading some Russian guys, and
I'm glad there was a but there.
So yeah, I know, I was seriously depressed.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just thought, why bother? You know, polishing brass on a sinking ship. But anyway, these guys are using quantum physics and our own bodies. They're creating a new model of how things work, how the universe works, and our model is flawed. It's fatally flawed. We don't incorporate what we know about quantum physics into our view of reality, and I believe that's truly done on purpose, because we can understand quantum physics and we can understand our potential, and we've also come to the end of our dependence on just our left brain. And what we're finding now is that we have the enteric brain has as many neurons as the rest of our brain up here, but we dumb it down.
What is the enteric brain?
All the brain cells, all the neurons that are in our digestive system and all our organs, and we tell it to shut up, but in fact we do. I mean, if you have, for the example I like to use is if you eat something that your body doesn't like, it's going to complain. It's going to give you heartburn. And instead of listening to it and saying, gee, I should be listening to that, we throw a thumbs at it and tell it to shut up. So anyway, so these Russian guys are working in a new model of reality, and I want to talk about that when I'm on the show the next time, because it gives us an incredible amount of hope that we are amazing. Our bodies are in reality quantum biocomputers that we just don't know how to use. But in fact, some of our ancient scriptures give us keys to how that works, and we're just unconscious. We read it. We read the Bible, and we don't get 75% of it because it's just beyond what we're conscious of.
And I think what you also said was that this new view of quantum physics may be a way out even of Fukushima.
Exactly, yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that these guys are doing some stuff that would just
Blow your mind.
look like magic. You know?
Bill, we're out of time.
Well, it was a great show. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed this conversation a lot.
Thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome to the last segment of Citizens Forum, Wednesday, March 26th in the Memorial Arena in Victoria. I'd like to thank again our volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes it all happen. Our guest in this segment is Rick Habgood. We're going to be talking about democracy and proportional representation. And I would make a prediction that if we had proportional representation, the arena that we are filming this in would be called the Memorial Arena and not the Save on Foods Memorial Arena, because that's how important proportional representation and democracy are.
I think you're absolutely right. Thanks for having me on again,
because I got the
Jack.
idea from you.
I know that. You beat me to the gun here. I watched the Elizabeth May interview.
Okay.
30-minute interview that people can pick up on at Citizens Forum, Elizabeth May. And it was an absolutely excellent interview. I learned a lot. And I realized that I haven't actually been paying attention as much as I thought I had been. And she pointed a lot of stuff out that was very, very pertinent to where we are right now as a democracy and as a society. And without a doubt, what she's saying indicates that we are in trouble, no doubt about it. You know, we do have a lot of things to fix. And what it did was it made me look back at the shows that we used to do, and the shows that you do here, and the shows that I did with Breaking Ice, and all the good folks, you know, that we would interview, and all the good attentions that they had, you know. And then all of a sudden they get out there, they get the troops organized, and then they hit a wall, a stone wall. And that happened time and time and time again. How many people have we interviewed that have this issue and they don't know where to go?
Yeah. And they try their best.
And they try their best. They're passionate.
And they're trying to do good things, help society, help the world.
Great people,
Yeah.
smart people. And back then, you know, I didn't have an answer actually, because, you know, it certainly wasn't political. And unfortunately, the politicians are the ones that pulled all the strings. So unless you actually knew somebody that had an in with a, you know, like with a assistant deputy minister or whatever, and they could get you an audience with whoever, and then they would listen to you, and then they would shake your hand and they say, well, you know, we're going to look into it for you. And then you'd never hear from them again. And you know that this has happened time and time again. Will you interview people on this show? So what is it? You know, and I never, you know, back in those days, I never connected it to electoral systems. I just didn't connect the dots. I just didn't think that an electoral system was that important. You know, I'm sure, like almost everybody else, you know, that is passionate about an issue, they believe that if they can get the right people on board, that things will change. And even if they do get the right people on board, they still got to get past the ministry that controls that sector. And that's always been the stumbling block. It's that sort of stonewall.
Yeah, so what we find is that our governments, the people we elect, have become our enemies on so many of the issues that we think are important. It's city government, provincial government, and the federal government. You know, and you know, I used to be very involved in forestry issues, and I remember, you know, many years ago when I first got involved, it all seemed so simple because the science and just what was right seemed so obvious.
Yeah.
But I also didn't understand at the time that none of it mattered. The corporations controlled the government.
Uh-huh.
The governments were totally uninterested in what anybody had to say, and so was the media. And you know, you think you're going into a fight where if you have an intelligent point, an argument to make, and most people support that argument, you think as an innocent and naive person that your politicians are going to say, well, yeah, that makes sense, let's do it. But you find out very quickly that that's not how the system works at all.
It's not how it works. And we were very naive back then. I remember when we were at the Sierra Club and we were fighting for the forests. And I remember getting, you know, brilliant people, Cameron Young, Peter McAllister, people like that, you know, and we would strategize, you know, as to what needs to be done. I can remember Peter bringing up Globe and Mail, Maclean's, Time Magazine, Newsweek, National Geographic, all those guys into Clackwood Sound with the idea that he would be able to create so much noise about Clackwood Sound that the government just would automatically say, okay, let's save it. And it was an NDP government too. And the NDP government, by the way, came to a meeting of the Sierra Club, and I believe you were there, and Harcourt said that if we supported him, that he would bring peace to the woods. Do you remember that?
I don't remember
You
that,
don't,
but
yeah.
I remember that was the general picture.
Yeah, you remember. Well, the NDP wanted to bring peace to the woods.
And once they were elected,
Who are you? What's your name?
They sold us out completely, 100%.
I know.
The NDP, when they were elected in 1991,
1991.
had a chance to not only save the forests of British Columbia, but to create a great economy here, because we had this wonderful resource. And there were 3 or 4 major groups. There were the logging companies, the giant corporations.
Noranda.
Yeah, there was the government, there was the unions, there were the environmental groups, and there was the public. And what the NDP did was they joined with the corporations and the most corrupt unions, and they pushed the environmental movement aside, and they lied to and misled the public into thinking that they were making great change. And people bought it, because when the corporations own the media, and you got the NDP telling them that things are great, people bought it, and we were just betrayed.
Yeah, it's a pretty cozy club.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And, you know, but I was very naive, and I thought that they would definitely be there for us. And I will never forget Mike Harcourt meeting, I believe his name was Ray Anderson from Noranda. He was the president of Noranda. And Noranda was a company that was going to basically log Clackwood Sound. McMillan Bloedel, actually. And I remember Harcourt meeting Anderson on top of Radar Hill, which is a very famous hill in Clackwood Sound, or in the peninsula, the Ucluelet Peninsula. And they met on the top of Radar Hill and shook hands. And I thought that symbolized exactly what we didn't want. that went in exactly the opposite direction, you know. And
I'm not sure you had the name right, but
yeah, I'm not too sure. But I know the incident was there. I think his name was Ray
doesn't matter.
But anyway, it doesn't really matter. He was the CEO of Noranda. And so anyways, getting back to the present day, what I did, I was actually going to do a different show today. But then after watching that Elizabeth May interview, I thought to myself, you know, I think I better just jump in here and just do a little bit of digging, because one of the things that I'm going to be doing over the next year or two is I'm going to be proving that first past the post, and I mean proving in a logistical way, that first past the post is a system devised in England a long time ago to protect the landowner's wealth.
And first past
from
the
the
post,
commons.
for those of you who don't know, is the voting system we use.
We use first past the
Yeah,
post
so you're saying that system was devised.
to protect the wealthy.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's created by the wealthy. They put it in place.
Yes, they did.
Okay, and I've got the evidence to that. And I was going to actually do that show today, but anyways, so I thought what I would do is I'm going to look at like 3 indexes. For one thing, the first index was the Environmental Performance Index, and then the second one is the Environmental Initiative, I believe. Commitment to development, the commitment to the environment worldwide. So anyways, on the environmental performance, they take a look at how a country is doing to protect its environment on the inside of that country, right? And now this is out of approximately 50 nations, 50 of the wealthiest nations, okay? And Canada ranked 24th. We're not doing very good. The United States came in 49th.
That's shocking.
That is
I'm
shocking.
surprised they're doing so much worse than we are. Who was at the top?
Switzerland.
Switzerland.
Switzerland, all the Scandinavian countries right up there.
So I think the point you're making here is that countries that work well and have proportional representation voting systems tend to be better in many, many different ways. And if we could switch to proportional representation, then this could also be a better country.
We could turn it around.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, because proportional representation is a political system that breeds collective wealth. All you got to do is look at Norway. Norway's got it right. Norway is doing wonders with protecting their resources for the public good. We, on the other hand, are protecting the resources for the private good. Exact opposite, which is first past the post.
Now, there are countries with PR voting systems that are in disastrous states. There's no question about that. So you've got to be on top of things. You've got to have more democracy. But a PR voting system, proportional representation voting system, is fundamentally important. And all it means is you have a voting system so that if a political party gets 10 to 15% of the votes, they get 10 to 15% of the seats. In our system, the Green Party here, for example, gets 10 to 15% of the votes, and provincially
Hardly
they get
anything.
We've got 1 seat now, or they've got 1 seat now,
Yeah.
provincially, and 1 seat federally.
Yeah.
In Germany, or some of the other European countries, they have dozens of seats because they get enough votes.
Yeah.
Our system, our first past the post system, doesn't allow it. It doesn't give us the governments that we vote for.
No, actually, it does give us the government that we vote for because our votes don't count. Only half our votes count, and our votes that do count go towards those people that we vote. Anyway, it's a very
Pathetic.
backward,
Yeah.
pathetic, yeah.
But still,
ancient system.
I'll say this. I think we need a national debate or a provincial debate for 6 months to a year with real information put out.
Yeah.
And then we have to have a ballot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say 3 proportional systems and first past the post. And people can vote 1, 2, 3, 4.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that gets more than 50% of the support wins. And if that's first past the post, okay, that's what people want. Let's do it.
There has to be it has to be balanced, though. I mean, and also people have to know the facts.
But people have to have information.
They have to have information, which means that the press has to do their job.
Well, the press has done their job, which is
Well,
to make sure
I
that
know.
nobody has any information.
I know. So the
They
press,
do it brilliantly.
there has to be a way of getting the information out to the public. What we have is first past the post breeds a lopsidedness. And we're looking at it right now. Like, actually, we're going to get. I'm going to skip that one. The one index I'd like to get to before we end the show is child poverty. And child poverty, if you want, I asked that German fellow that I met over in Germany a while back, last year, and he was a social scientist, and I said to him, I said, what is Germany's top resource? And I thought he was going to say education, and he came right back at me. He said, our children.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's exactly what it is. Our children are our top resource. So, anyways, I looked at the this goes with UNICEF to the child poverty, and we are absolutely out of 30 nations, we rank 23rd.
Out of 30,
30
nations,
top nations
Canada,
on the planet, we rank 23rd.
child poverty.
United States
Well,
is 29th.
thank you, Stephen Harper.
Yes,
Thank you, Christy Clark.
that's right.
Thank you, Mike Harcourt.
That's right.
Thank you, Jean Chrétien.
That's right.
Thank you, Globe and Mail.
Absolutely.
Thank you, CTV. Thank
Absolutely.
you, CBC, because you are the ones who've created it very deliberately. And we can do better, but it's up to us, because all of our leadership is both pathetic and corrupt.
That's right. Yeah, well, this proves it. I mean, if we can't take care of our children, what can we take care of? What is it that is more important than the children of our nation? And we're in 23rd spot according to UNICEF. And the United States is, and Britain is 21st. So there you got 3 nations
With first past
the post.
Yeah.
One's in 21st spot, we're in 23rd, and the United States is in 29th. So what does that say?
And once again, who are at the top?
They're all, well, they're all Scandi countries. Northern Europe, Europe is way up in the top 10. They dominate it. Iceland, Netherlands. But but one that is,
Oh, okay.
but
We'll
one,
have to stop. I think we'll have to stop.
Yeah, yeah. But we'll just wait for them to
they don't want us to record.
I should just write down what we were just saying about.
I know what we were saying.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so you were saying Iceland, Netherlands are in the top spots.
The what?
You were saying Iceland and the Netherlands.
Yeah,
are
that's
in the
right.
top. Okay.
Are we
So
ready?
carry- Yep.
Are we on? Okay, so Iceland, Iceland, Netherlands, all, okay. One country, though, that was consistently in the top 10 was Singapore. In all of these, the environment and child poverty. So I was a little, I was, surprised at that. But anyways, I think the most important part of this is that our first past the post system is an excellent system for breeding wealth, individual wealth. People who want to make a lot of money really do well with this system. But the majority of people, this system is a disaster, a total disaster. The interesting part is that in a proportional representation system that's run properly, let's say in Germany, across the board, the actual normal individual income is higher than what it is in Canada, United States, or Great Britain.
And Rick, I'm afraid we're out of time.
I know, we're out of time.
Thank you very much. I mean, what can I say? It's fundamentally important. Proportional representation. Thanks for watching Citizens Forum.